Get the iPad, it's great, long battery life.
It looks and feels like a laptop.
That's a huge improvement.
This brings me to the big question here. Is the iPad a laptop replacement?
It's outrageous! Hello everyone, it's me Rad, with me here is Vic. This is episode 5 of the PhoneArena show, and this one is an exciting one. Why? Because we get to discuss the latest and greatest iPads, which are finally here, the new iPad Pro, the new iPad Air, and when we say greatest, we mean literally, because they're like humongous, especially if you get the 13-inch one. What do you think about it?
So yeah, we've had the iPads for more than a week now, and it's really interesting to see them and to test them in person because they are so thin. And
love it.
Yeah, that's the first thing you notice. It's really impressive. Do we really need it though?
Yes.
Yes, we need it. It's cool. It's really cool. But yeah, what do we think about it? Let's maybe start with an overview of the iPads. And I just want to start with something that I noticed as I was using them. And as we were preparing to record this, we noticed that the screens on the iPads got so smudged with fingerprints because this is a touch-first device, so you touch it all the time. And you have to carry a cleaning cloth with you, clean it all the time. And basically that was one of the things that got a bit under the radar maybe. It's an editorial article published by Press here at the team, and what he says is that the thinness of the iPads is great, but he really wishes that they improve the oleophobic coating, which is basically that layer that prevents those fingerprint smudges from being so obvious. And he has an interesting theory. He says the moment that the iPad Pro started supporting the Apple Pencil, the oleophobic coating got worse. And he connects this to the Apple Pencil. I'm not sure if that's the case, if we have hard proof about that. But definitely I noticed it because you have to clean those screens really well before you start using them. They look a bit gross.
Well, but if you're an iPad user, don't you get like accustomed to the smudged display? Isn't it like normal thing?
Well, I personally dislike it. It's a pet peeve for me, but maybe for some people it would be okay.
Like, I cannot stand it on a laptop, for example.
Yeah, on a laptop.
On a MacBook or PC, whatever. You know, as long as it's not a touchscreen laptop, I cannot stand it if I have little smudges and fingerprints on the display. But on the iPad, on the phone, it's like I learned to not care about it.
Yeah, maybe for different people it's less of a trigger. For some people it's more, but yeah. There's just something that we noticed, and I wanted to surprise you with this beginning for the podcast. But anyway, let's talk about the specs, what's new, and did the rumors pan out, first of all? And I think
they did.
They did. Like everything that was in the rumors came true, and the big surprise was the M4 chipset.
Oh, yeah.
For the first time, Apple introduces a new chipset, powerful.
First on the iPad.
First on the iPad, not on the MacBook or the Mac or anything.
And do you know, like, what's the, I don't know if it's just a raw speed bump compared to the M3, or if there's any other benefit? Why did they decide to skip the M3, basically, and go straight to M4 on the Pro?
Well, I think there is a couple of things about this, but probably the new chipset was ready. I'm hearing that they're using a slightly different manufacturing process over at the TSMC factory where they make it. And basically the M4 chipset is better optimized for AI, which is the future for Apple.
Right.
So it wouldn't make much sense to include the M3 for a product that is gonna last like maybe a year. The previous iPad was announced nearly 2 years ago, so we don't know how much this one will.
Yeah, plus you want users to use these. They typically hold on to iPads longer than they hold on to a phone, right? For maybe 3-4 years easily.
Yes, that too. So yeah, I think that AI was an integral part of the reasoning behind the M4 chipset, but we still don't know much about Apple AI. We're gonna learn soon.
Hopefully.
WWDC is coming. The big keynote is on June 10th, so stay tuned for that.
I hope it's not like the Google I/O keynote, which was like 99% AI.
Yeah, that will be the second topic for today's podcast. So stay tuned. But let's get back to the iPad. What else did you like about it? What else do you think is like the?
I think it was prime for getting a little bit lighter and thinner, and I think they delivered pretty well on that front, because that one is the 13-inch one, which, as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, is still the 12.9-inch display.
Yeah, it's pretty much, as far as what I have read, the screen size is about the same. Apple is just presenting that in an easier to digest way. It's just say 13-inch.
Okay.
And it comes with this new keyboard.
Beautiful Magic Keyboard.
Yes.
With aluminum plane on the top.
Exactly, it's aluminum, but on the outside it still has the same rubbery material as the previous one. And now when you use the iPad like this, and I would argue if it's a 13-inch if it's a 13-inch iPad, you probably want to use it with a keyboard. It doesn't make much sense to just have it as a handheld device. It's just too big if you're going to use it only as a handheld. So it makes sense to get the keyboard. So with the keyboard, despite the super thin design, because the keyboard is quite thick, now look at my MacBook. I have an M1 MacBook Air, and pretty similar. I would say the MacBook is a bit thinner, right?
Yeah, the MacBook definitely a little bit thinner. That's the M1 version, so it's tapered. But even if it was the M2, the new design, it would, I think, still be probably thinner.
Yeah, I would guess it's thinner. But what's nice is that previously the iPad Pro with the keyboard used to be a bit heavier than the MacBook Air, and now they're about the same weight, which is
great success. For the iPad.
Yes, exactly. So it's getting better at becoming a laptop in terms of just the physical characteristics. The keyboard is much nicer, the trackpad is larger, you have that top row of keys, you now have an escape button. I was missing so much. It feels in many ways like, if you look at it, it looks and feels like a laptop. Finally, I think it has kind of reached its final mature stage now, which it hadn't before. There were some compromises.
Yeah, the first Magic Keyboard was felt like a prototype, right? It felt like a definitely first-gen product, experimental product. Let's see what happens if we make this. Now, turned out to be a success.
Yeah.
Seeing a lot of people using their iPads with the Magic Keyboard, and so this new one kind of refines all the rough edges, sometimes literally, when it comes to the Magic Keyboard. So yeah.
It's a really nice keyboard. I really like the keyboard. It's very similar to the keyboard on a MacBook. Really nice feel of the keys, nice travel to each button. It's a really nice keyboard. Well refined, also very expensive at, what is it, $350?
Same price as the
same prices. One. Yeah, same price as before. Basically that is the iPad, the new M4 chipset. Of course, the screen was started with the oleophobic coating, but it's a tandem OLED screen. So basically 2 OLED panels glued together to achieve higher brightness.
Sounds expensive to me.
It indeed is. So yeah.
And that's one of the big improvements, right? It's the screen, the OLED display.
Yep.
One of the new key features.
Perfect blacks, nice contrast, just like you're used to on your phone. But it gets even brighter than a typical laptop. So in many ways, I would say that for this form factor, this is probably the best screen you can get on the market right now.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just wondering how much of a improvement will you see compared to the previous one, the mini LED?
The mini LED, yeah.
The mini LED display, because do you know if it gets brighter than the mini LED?
Well, I'm not sure. I know that this one reaches 1,000 nits.
Okay.
And your typical MacBook, for example, it would go to 500.
Yeah.
So it's like technically the number is double, but because it's not a linear progression, it doesn't feel like a twice as bright a screen.
Yeah.
But still, it is brighter. And if you don't quote me on the numbers, but I would bet that it is brighter than the previous mini LED screen.
Yeah, and for a device which is so portable like the iPad, which is supposed to be taken outdoors, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge improvement. Aside from that, the brightness, I don't know. I mean, sure, it probably looks a little bit better than the mini LED, but it was so good to begin with that, I mean, yeah, slightly deeper blacks, I don't know. It's not a revelation for sure.
Yeah, it's a great screen, which comes after another great screen.
Yeah.
So
pretty
yeah.
much. If you're wondering whether you should, make an upgrade because of the OLED screen, I would say no, definitely not.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you own the previous iPad, probably the OLED screen is not going to be the one feature.
If you're wondering whether you should upgrade because M2 going up to M4,
no.
Probably not.
So yeah, I think the technology has reached this point that it is really hard to have like a breakthrough new feature that would force you to switch from one generation to
it's a refined device.
Another.
It's a refined product.
But unfortunately, with this one, it's a refined product, but also it comes with a refined price.
Yeah.
So it starts at $1,300 for the 13-inch model.
Yeah.
Which is on the expensive side, and especially considering that $350 keyboard, so you're looking at about $1,700 for the whole package if you want to use it like a laptop replacement. And this brings me to the big question here. Is the iPad a laptop replacement? Will it ever be a laptop replacement? Would you use it?
That is the big question.
Let me know your thoughts.
Going straight for it. I tried. I tried to heavily use the iPad Pro recently with a Magic Keyboard, see what the extent of its capabilities are. It was fun exploring, what it can do. It's come a long way, definitely, from a few years back. They're trying to compensate for the lack of things with new features like the multitasking, not just side by side, but different windows. You can pull up apps and look at it from different in different sizes, move them around.
You have Stage Manager also.
Stage Manager, plug it into an external display. That's where it shines. Actually, it works with. If you can get a big enough USB hub, you can theoretically plug in your keyboard, your mouse, your webcam.
It sounds to me like you're really trying to make some excuses to say it kind of works, but it's not perfect.
The thing is, if you want to make it work, you'll probably make it work.
Yeah.
But there's a big there's a big but. No other way to put it. There's a big but attached to all of that, and that is why. And it's why bother with all the because it's work. It's definitely work, and it's a struggle to get it to work with the things that you need: cameras, peripherals, external devices. You're probably gonna make it work if you make it your life's mission. But the question is why? And then, even if you're successful, it's a little bit clumsy using the mouse. If you get a Magic Mouse, it's fine. But then again, nobody wants a Magic Mouse really. So, and with a normal mouse, it doesn't work. Okay, you're maybe fine with the touchpad. Okay, good. It's still very limited compared to a Mac or a PC or just a regular, normal type OS.
So I think you're describing perfectly the viewpoint of a MacBook / PC user. So someone who has spent many years working on be it a desktop or a laptop, who's used to Mac OS, who's used to Windows, who knows all the features and functionalities, and who can be really quick and efficient with it. And even if you're not a pro user, you have that familiarity, you go to the iPad, you immediately feel like you've downgraded your experience.
Even if it's just fine for most things, there is a little sense of insecurity that at some point you might need something. You might need an app, a program, some sort of software that it's not going to be able to run.
Yeah.
Because the great thing that Apple's doing right now with the Mac, and again, this question, we wouldn't have it if they didn't make the move to M processors on the Mac. Imagine that they were still stuck with Intel on the Mac.
Yeah.
This is not a topic. Okay, get the iPad, it's great, long battery life, but now that we have M processor, it's not, that is why we're wondering which one, right? But the Mac can run iPad apps and everything else.
Yeah.
And the iPad can just run the iPad apps. It cannot run Mac software.
It's a mismatch.
I mean, the limitation here is on the iPad side.
Yeah, definitely.
And so as a somewhat of a pro user, let's say, I can see that it's beginning to get all the essentials. It's covering the essential bases, but there's this little voice in my head that tells me if at some point I need let's say a more of an obscure piece of software, I cannot do it on the iPad, and I don't want to be put in such a position where this happens and I'm like, sorry, I can't do it on my device.
Yeah, definitely. I have to agree with you. And one very interesting point here is for years we've been wondering what exactly is the iPad. And it's been going closer and closer to full Mac OS, MacBook territory. But we got to hear for the first time, I think, this year from Apple's vice president of marketing for Mac and iPad, so the man. And he talked to Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal, speaking about how Apple sees the iPad and whether they see it as a product that will one day replace the MacBook or a separate product. What is it? So basically what he said is, let me quote, "We don't see them as competing devices," that is the iPad and the MacBook. "We see them as complementary devices. macOS is a very different paradigm of computing. So iPad is touch first, while Mac is for indirect manipulation." Yeah, and this was really strange to me. I guess it makes sense in some way. They're two different products. Of course, they're complementary devices. They're not one. But if you look at it from a different point of view, it kind of seems like Apple is saying you can buy a MacBook and an iPad.
Of course they are.
Yeah, but
of course
this, to me, it feels very wrong because these are two very expensive machines, more than $1,000. They look pretty much the same. Just look at them.
No kidding. I mean, come on. Of course, he's gonna say that no, it's not. You're not supposed. If you're a consumer, you're not supposed to be. Which one do I pick? A Mac or an iPad? Which is pretty much every consumer. And he's like, no. Get both. They're complementary devices. How are they complementary devices at this point where they're like almost exactly the same?
Yeah.
How do they complement each other?
Yeah, I think that's a typical kind of Apple marketing stretch here.
They're just the size is the same, the weight is the same, the capabilities are almost but not quite the same. The prices are the same, or the iPad is more expensive.
Yeah.
So how do they complement each other? I mean, the Apple Watch complements the iPhone.
Yeah, that's easy to see.
Okay? The iPad is probably complements the iPhone.
Yeah.
I don't see how the iPhone complements the Mac, sure.
Of course, yeah.
How does the iPad complement the Mac? I don't see that one.
Yeah, I don't see it either. To me, that was really strange.
Equally portable devices.
Yeah.
And equal horsepower, screens, weight, size.
I like your outrage.
It's outrageous.
Anyway, but that's what he said, and there was a good point that one of our colleagues, Press, made about the iPad, and Press basically says that there is indeed a difference in the paradigm and the way you use them, and you kind of have to think about the iPad. iPad OS as an iPhone, and it started as part of the iOS ecosystem, right? It then branched out to iPad OS, to its separate thing. But it's really very much an iOS device. Looks like it. So
Closer to an iOS device than a Mac.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And so it's much easier for those users who have never used the laptop or find the Mac OS challenging. It's much easier for them to just tap, use their favorite apps, and not have to deal with the complexity of a MacBook, if there is such a thing. I'm not sure there is. Because it doesn't take too much to get used to that operating system, but I'm saying this as a long-time user. And I can see, for example, some younger people who are used to doing everything on their phone make their way with an iPad much easier. I can say the same thing about elderly people, for example, who find the MacBook a bit more challenging. For those specific use case, maybe an iPad could be an easier starting point. So it is maybe very slightly different, but for some very specific groups of people, and it's arguable.
Oh, probably I mean, there is a point to that, right? I mean, we don't want to look at it just from our standpoint. There are younger users who grew up on the iPhone and the iPad and pencils and all that, and touch screens. And we didn't. We grew up with keyboards and mouse. Fine. And then again, maybe for those types of users who are like natives to the touch paradigm, it's probably like they feel themselves at home there, and they know their way around these systems, and they can do things that maybe we can't on touch operating systems.
Sure.
Little tricks that we don't know. Like I'm looking at, let's say, my wife who is editing pictures and videos and shorts on her phone, and it's like, and I'm like, feels so, I don't know, inconvenient. I would much rather sit on the computer and be like with the keyboard and the mouse.
And do it probably faster.
And probably, maybe do it
but not sure.
faster, but I'm not certain. So probably there is something to that, where you're like, grow up to be a native of this paradigm, that it just works for you. And then, sure, if you have an iPhone, grab a big iPhone, like the iPad, which is more capable than an iPhone, to an extent. So okay, I get that point.
But like maybe let's try and wrap this thing like for those people who even they grew up on iOS on an iPhone. I'm not sure that the iPad Pro actually makes much sense for them. Like maybe for them an iPad would be complementary to the iPhone, but they would be just fine with the regular iPad. And this is just giving you like a super fancy screen.
It's just nicer.
It's just nicer, but the price still doesn't seem quite justified to me. And I can't explain it any other way, just that's the way I feel after using it for a while. And I would be perfectly fine for buying a cheaper MacBook and a cheap iPad so I can use it touch first, handheld. Occasionally and still enjoy it, but justifying the price on a full-blown iPad Pro maybe for some people, for artists, people who like to use this super fancy special Apple Pencil Pro that you can squeeze and
that is the one thing that like it's the key to the iPad kingdom in a way, because that's the one major functionality that you cannot get on your Mac. This thing here, which is very nice. It works great for if you're an artist, there is no debate. But even for normal people, like note taking, jotting down stuff, drawing simple things, ideating, it's a great feature to have, which is currently locked to the iPad. So that's a big one.
That's a big one. So anyway,
probably the thing with the iPad, just one final thing, is that it's evolved to a point where it covers such a broad spectrum of use cases.
Right.
because it's a very versatile device. It's way more versatile than a Mac in a way. In a different way, it's more versatile because you get the cheap iPad, and you can still do a lot on it. Pretty much everything. It even has the keyboard now, if you want, if you want that. But it's way cheaper, way more accessible, and it covers very different types of use cases. And then you get the Air, and then you get to the Pro, which is way more powerful. Which is it looks like the same iPad, but it's a completely different beast.
Okay, I think that's a good transition point to the iPad Air, which is another new iPad.
Yeah.
But not much has changed here, so far less airtime for it. But anyway, we have the 13-inch model, and we didn't have this size before, so that's what's new. And you have $1,300 price for the iPad Pro, $800 for the large iPad Air, so it's a huge difference in terms of prices.
Yeah, huge difference.
$500 price difference, and this one is really good in terms of its value for money ratio. You still get a beautiful screen, not OLED, still beautiful.
Still beautiful.
An LCD screen. You get a very powerful M2 chipset, laptop grade again. So you can do pretty much everything. It supports the Apple Pencil Pro as well. But this one doesn't support the new Magic Keyboard. It only supports the older version, which doesn't have the top row keys and the larger trackpad. So a very capable machine at a more affordable price. Also, we should say that the camera has finally moved to the horizontal side on the top. Finally, you can use them like a normal person. You will not look weird on video calls.
Yeah.
Thank you, Apple. So that's the iPad Air.
And for a first, in the iPad Air, you get storage.
Yeah,
in the base model.
You get double the storage. It used to have only 64 gigs, and now it starts at 128, which is what most people need. So anyway, wrapping this up, this is what the iPad lineup looks right now. You have the iPad 10th gen model, the basic one for about $300. Then you have the iPad mini, which hasn't been updated in a while. And so those two devices run on Apple A series chipsets, which means they do not support Stage Manager. So you don't get the full multitasking features. And then you get the iPad Air with the M2 chipset and the iPad Pro with the M4 chipset.
Yep.
And that is the lineup. It's simplified, so that's good to see. And maybe it's time to jump to our next topic.
Next topic, it's not a huge one, really. I mean, from the perspective of, smartphones and devices and products, which is Google I/O.
Yeah, Google I/O was really different this year.
It was frustrating a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it was all about AI, and we kind of got a tease when Google unveiled the Google Pixel 8a a few days before Google I/O.
Which is funny, because we thought they were like playing games, with Apple, because it was right around the same time that they announced the iPads.
Yeah, it was on the same date. The same date the iPad event was.
Yeah.
A few hours in, Google drops the Pixel 8a. Pretty quietly, we should say, but maybe justified, because the Pixel 8a was a rather minor spec bump to an already solid mid-range phone. Same $500 price on the Pixel 8a. What was improved is the screen finally gets to support 120 Hertz, which is a nice touch. You get the newer chipset,
the Tensor
G3 on board, and the camera is pretty much the same in terms of quality. So this is the bread and butter, I would say, of the Pixel family. It hasn't changed all that much.
No.
The experience still pretty nice, still clean Android.
It's nice, refined design.
Yeah.
The phone looks good, I think, from the back. From the front.
Fun colors.
Fun colors.
But from the front, that huge bezel. Super ugly.
Doesn't look good. The screen seems fine in terms of specs and refresh rate. It seems a little bit reflective compared to the higher tier ones.
It gets pretty bright. In our test, it scored very high for brightness, but it is reflective, and you use it outdoors, you definitely see those reflections. So it's not all great. Battery life also hasn't changed by much. So there's the Pixel 8a, just a cheaper Pixel, a nice entry point. minor refresh, but nothing all that major.
Nothing exciting, really, sadly. And then the other product announcement, if we can call it that, which is the new, the old new Pixel tablet.
Yeah, that was weird. That was really
Very
weird.
The so-called relaunched tablet,
Yeah.
which is pretty much the same as the previous one, just you can now purchase it without the dock, right?
Yeah, that's about it. You can get it cheaper at $400.
Yeah.
It used to start at $500 with the dock, and now you have just the tablet. It's a good move. I don't know why we should even call it a relaunch. It's just a very minor thing. And Google just probably made these announcements a bit earlier because it wanted to kind of free the lane for
Yeah.
the big announcement, which was
Pretty much.
AI.
AI.
This was all about Gemini and Google AI, and I think it's actually a good thing because I've been using now Gemini on the Pixel 8a, on other Android phones, and what's new is that now when you start the Google Assistant, you get a prompt. I've tried this on a few phones. I'm not sure if every phone will get this. That's a Google Assistant update that's happening in the background. They should, but I can't vouch for that. But anyway, you get a prompt that asks you if you want to switch to Gemini.
Yeah.
And once you accept, you have beautiful Gemini on your phone with just a long hold of the power button. And it works great. I love it. It's pretty fast. It's still cloud-based, not.
It's not on device AI. Still.
This is not the Gemini Nano thing, which is on device, which is coming to Pixel phones first later this year. But it's a great first step. And Google talked a lot about AI, and it's clear that this is the future of the company. And they're taking this seriously because we all know what happened with ChatGPT, its astronomical growth. And Google has responded in a pretty good way, I think.
Yeah. It's a solid contender, seems like, with their Gemini. There was talk about Apple's Ajax for a while. I don't know what happened with that. I feel like that topic kind of got replaced with rumors of partnerships with ChatGPT or Google, Gemini. So I'm not sure what they're going to do.
I think the final position here, the final situation for Apple is that they will. The expectation is they will launch this on-device AI thing in some native form made by Apple with some smaller models. Valuing user privacy and stuff like that, typical Apple. But in terms of a chatbot style of feature, they will rely on a partnership with OpenAI and ChatGPT. And as far as we have heard, talks between Apple and Google haven't progressed much for their use of Gemini. So it's probably going to be ChatGPT in some form for future Apple devices. But we have to wait. The WWDC
soon enough,
is
right.
coming very soon. And that was Google I/O. It was all about AI. And one thing that was missing, I want to say, was the Google Pixel Fold, which was announced last year at the previous I/O.
Yeah.
And no word about it this year. It could come at a later point, but currently we don't know what's happening about it. And there haven't been many rumors about it, actually. It's always been a bit quiet on that front.
Probably makes sense, somewhat, because of we're at the same time we're hearing other rumors that about Samsung's Unpacked, right, which is this year again expected to happen a little bit earlier than previous years. So that could probably make the two product launches a little bit too close. So if you were Google, you'd probably want to, I don't know, maybe consider pushing that later in the year.
That's an interesting theory, yeah. Could be so, yeah. So probably next time we'll be here talking about the new Galaxy Fold Flip series and
Hopefully.
new Galaxy watches. That's what's expected to happen very soon. And of course WWDC. Are there any other thoughts? Something else you wanna?
No, that was. I'm sad.
You're sad?
Honestly, I'm sad.
Why?
Google destroyed our I/O experience this year, to me at least. Maybe it's back to the roots because it's a developer conference, like WWDC, right? So all of the talk there was about AI, sure, but it was way more targeted at developers and people who understand that kind of stuff. It was like more advanced in a way. And so, I mean, if there is a takeaway for consumers, and it's that Gemini Nano, which is going to be the smaller model, which is going to work on device. When that happens a little bit later, first coming to Pixels, I think that's going to be good news for Pixel and future Android users because it's probably going to make the Gemini experience faster and more secure as well, because it won't be for most of the operations that you're going to do with it. They're not going to be cloud-based. None of your information and your prompts and the things that you share with it are going to go to the cloud. So that's going to stay on device, which is great for privacy, and it's probably going to work faster as well.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a smaller, faster model, which is I think that's good, because I don't think the current implementation of Gemini in Android, the one you mentioned, which is as a replacement for the assistant, is quick enough. It's quick.
Yeah.
But
it could be faster.
Yeah, a little bit of waiting time there. So hopefully the Nano is going to fix that.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. I think this will do it for this episode. Thanks for watching, guys.
A bittersweet episode.
Ending on a sad note.
Ending on a bittersweet note. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.
See you around.